Give me a second. I still got some nice music playing in the background. I think this is Shifting Past by Softy and Caspa. And I'm pretty sure it's not coming through the stream. Welcome back. This is Build Theory. I'm Aurian Archive. Let's get started. Now, in the previous live stream, I went pretty heavy, so this live stream, we're going to try and keep it pretty light. And what I want to talk about, and this is really for the player who asked for comments on their Elec SR build, is knowing your character before you start playing. And if there's kind of, I guess there's two different ways to think about this. And that for some players, learning the character as they level is the joy of the game. It's every character is different, every character makes different choices. And thus, as you go down the list, you find out the different strengths and weaknesses each character has. And in that aspect, just getting in and playing a game, just getting in and getting started, just running missions, running with task forces, may be a lot of fun for people. And quite honestly, I'm probably at the point now where it's very difficult for me to go into City of Heroes without thinking about what my character is going to look like at the top end. What is my character going to look like in the mid range? What is my character going to look like in the low end? How do I plan each character? How do I know what the character's strengths and weaknesses are? And is there any easy way to do that in game? Well, there is a bit of yes and no to that question. In game, when you choose a new power, when you make a character and you pick your powers, you get all the information that the game exposes about that power. Now, you also get information about how that power looks and animates so that you have a good idea even before you get started with. Sorry, my cat just walked in. You have a pretty good idea looking down through the different powers, and as you swap between different ones, what it's going to look like in practice. And we'll pick on myself for a second. We'll go tanker, we'll do powers, bio, secondary powers, energy melee. And actually, no, I won't. Now, I probably haven't copied the costumes over yet. It doesn't look like I have. Alright, I probably should have done that first. Resync the copy folders. Okay. Where am I loading from? Alright, beta 2. Beta 2. Okay. There's Dusted Twilight. And I want Panda. There's Pandemonia. And now, since the stream crashed out when I was making this costume, you missed me agonizing over the base black color scheme. And then I went in. I didn't save a costume now, did I? No, no power customization was saved. Oh well. I'm pretty sure it was light blue on magenta across all powers. And when I did these animations, I have an idea of how the character is going to look. I have an idea of what the power does. So it gives me an idea of what I'm looking at, just all the information here. And it really pays attention when you're making some characters to look closely at what each power does. And if you're playing an armor class, pays attention to kind of go down and look at what each power says it does. This offers resistance, and there's a lot of resistance going down, and only a couple of like couple of defenses, not all that much. And if I go to a set like shield, well, okay, we'll do super reflexes, and we'll see that this one gets a lot of defense. Doesn't get a whole lot of resist or a whole lot of resist we can do anything about, but gets a whole lot of defense. So reading this information here, and knowing what your character is, what their native powers are capable of, what they're going to get in the first and secondary powers, will help you influence your build later on. Now, a little trick that I picked up at some point, while we bring this window back up to the front, is just pick a character. I mean, almost any character. In this case, we're going to go with a mastermind. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to take all of the primary powers, and I'm going to take all of the secondary powers. And now I know I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 slots to work with. But before I go any further, I'm just going to pump all of these out to 3 slots. And I know I really should be talking about something while I'm pumping these out. Oh, no, there's a 6th slot there. Okay, so we do have 6 to work with. I'm going to pump all of these out to 6. And I'm going to come back through and I'm going to go to our sets. I'm going to see what sets are primary or what sets we can take. This appears to be a damage power, so now I'm going to come back here and I'm just going to slot each one with a damage. This one is a debuff power. Now I know that defense reduction is very powerful, but for now I'm not going to put anything in there. This is an attack set, so we're going to bump this out to 3. And again, an attack set, so bump this out to 3. Doesn't give us anything, no set, so we'll skip that. Call Raven, since Call Swarm was an attack, this is probably an attack, so we're going to bump this one out to 3. Ice Shield, well, this one is a defense and resist. If we look here, we see that in the pop-up, our first is defense, melee, smashing, lethal. So we're going to pump this with 3 defense. Lion's apparently an attack set, so we're going to pump this with 3 attack. Snowstorm. Well, that looks to be a slow, so we'll pump this with 3 slows. Glacial Shield. It's another defense resist, so we'll bump this with 3 defenses. Fortify Pack, we see as a defense and a regeneration. And if we look at the information, it gives us defense and regeneration. So we're going to lock this off and go a little deeper. You can command your beat to fight more efficiently. Using Fortify Pack will prevent your pet from benefiting from pack mentality. The number of charges to determine the potency of the defense and regeneration buff that will be added to your pack. Not very specific on whether or not it affects the player or just the pack, but we look in here, it's only defense and regeneration to target. It does not stack from same caster. And we look on our effects, again, all of this really doesn't really give us, it's all about to target. So apparently this will not stack on us. But we're going to, since we're not sure how it's going to operate, we're going to bump this out to 3. And we're also going to bump this out to 3. And now we're going to do both a defense. And since we see that these have to be toggled on, we'll toggle them on. Frostwork, I know, is a heal, so we'll bump this out to 3, but this won't do anything for us. If you just heard the thunder in the background, yes, there is a storm moving in. So if I crash out, that's, well, to be expected. Another defense resist. So we're just going to, we have resist fire, cold, energy. Now I know that this is toggle PBA affects the team. Ice Shield only affects ally. Glacial Shield only affects ally. So this one should affect us. So we're going to do the same thing like we did with Fortify Pack. We're going to do both values, defense and resistance. Alright, and we'll check the dot on that. Summon Dire Wolf, since it's a summon, is probably an attack based on everything else that we've had, so we'll bump it to an attack. And then Benom doesn't have any enhancement. It's a debuff, and we can check that on the pop over. Tame Beast doesn't give us any enhancement. This is another pet specific power. Sleet, it looks to be an attack, so we're going to just bump it 3 times with attack. And heat loss is a slow and an endurance. Okay, general rule of thumb, every time you see a slow, look and go for the other power. Because improving the slow generally won't do much, except for the single cases where you're using a slow for the range debuff on pacing of the turtle. Otherwise, just skip it. It's an easy skip, and it's something I know to think about. Just go to the next one. But it also pays, another case would have been the Tesla Blast, which we'll probably get back to, because I'll bring up and do the same thing with the Elec SR. Okay. It is. Be right back. I'm going to go push the door all the way shut. Alright, now that we've done all of that, I've clicked on totals. And now under totals, we can look and see, does this build have any, or do the powers do anything that affect the player? Well, if we turn Arctic Fog on and off, we can see that, no, we're not actually getting any buffs from Fortify Pack. And we can also see on Snowstorm that all it's doing is contributing to our endurance drain. It's not doing anything for us specifically. So, what we've done here is we've slammed each of these powers and their effect into the red ED cap. They really cannot be improved anymore until you have an incarnate power. And now we know that for this build, we don't, or rather for these power selections for Beast Cold Dom, we really don't have anything that affects us as a player very dramatically. We have a little bit of energy, fire, cold, but we know that any other survivability bonuses will have to come from our sets or from our tertiary powers. Now, there are some tertiary powers that are more desirable than others. And as I've been over multiple times before now, defense is what matters in City of Heroes. Whether or not you get hit with an attack determines is a, whether or not you get hit. The hit itself carries the effects of an attack. So if you do not get hit, you do not suffer ill effects. So defense is thus a priority. You don't get hit, you don't take damage. You don't get hit, you don't take a mess. You don't get hit, you don't take a debuff. So working towards soft cap defenses is always the primary build goal. Because as soon as you get to just smashing lethal soft cap, you've eliminated a huge number of the possible attacks that can do something to your character. You may still have to deal with energy, negative, fire, cold attacks, but that's what you have all of your other powers for. And I do know, and this is kind of in advance, what powers are useful in the tertiary pools. Now, most of the powers in the tertiary pools are based on minor damages, and in some archetypes, Cough Blaster, they're not based on anything at all except somebody fevered dreams and broken imaginations. No, I'm not sorry. And as you go down through this list, it's quickly clear that only one of the tertiaries for a mastermind is worth taking, and that's Scorpion Shield, because it's the only one that gives defense. Go back to info to make this easier, and now we're just going to buff Scorpion Shield up, click that over to on, and now we see that with Scorpion Shield in place, we have 27 smashing lethal energy. So to get to the smashing lethal soft cap, instead of having to come up with 39.6% defense of smashing lethal, I'm pretty sure I don't have calc already open. Alright, 45 minus 27.34 is 17.66. In order to get the defensive soft cap for smashing lethal, we only have to get 17.66 points of defense. Now, if I have a resist power like Arctic Fog, I know that I can go to my resist and pick up Steadfast Protection, Resistant Defense, and Gladiator's Armor, type protection defense, and now we're at 33.34. So 45 minus 33.34, I only now have to make up 11.66 smashing lethal defense to get my character to soft cap. And now I can go back and start looking at these other powers, looking through the pet archetype powers. Do any offer melee or smash lethal? Yes, Sovereign Right does. It does, but it needs 6 slots down. Oh, Unbreakable Guard. It gives me 1.56, the same buff at only 4 slots. That looks like a really good choice. It's on a pet summon. It's a really bad choice. Alright, do any of our attacks, other than that, give us melee? Not really many. Ice Shield. Hmm. We could do Unbreakable Guard on a couple of our shields and maybe shore up some slots with defense. So we've already taken up a few slots here. Or what if we look at pool powers? What if we look at all these other powers over here that we can take? Now I know in advance that maneuvers gives defense. So I can take maneuvers. And again, same thing. Not even going to really worry about sets now. And we're going to just fill those in, turn maneuvers on, and what are we looking at? 37.5. Wow, so 45 minus 37.5, I only need to make up 7.5 smashing lethal defense. How am I going to get there? Well, I could take leaping for combat jumping. That's a defense power. And even though I know it's kind of silly, because I know that combat jumping has almost no defense. All right, what do our totals look like now? Let's turn combat jumping on. And we're at 41! So 45 minus 41.06. 3.94. We've only got to make up 3.94. Okay, how do we make up that last slot? Oh, I know! I saw weave. Weave has a defense. Kick, tough, weave, and same thing. We fill this in, and now we're actually way over soft cap defense. We're at 48%. So we could actually, can we take combat jumping away? We take combat jumping away, we're back below. Can we take maneuvers away? Yeah, we're still low though. But the thing is, once you get to this point, where you have a certain set amount of survivability, when you have an idea of what your powers actually, how they are going to affect the character when used, or how they are not going to affect the character, you now have a better idea about where to start your build at. If you know that you can get close to smashing lethal soft cap just by choosing powers and pushing those powers into their enhancement diversification values, you can push the cap on them. Then you have more freedom to work with. Okay, I want to come back to Call Swarm. It's just a damage power. Do any of these damage powers do me any good? And then you can start to focus on other things that matter to the character. Like, and a good example would be heat loss. It's a very powerful debuff. Well, now that you know that you can reach defensive soft cap, you have an idea of how many slots you're going to need to reach defensive soft cap and how many you have left. We can see up here we still need 17 slots, or we have 17 slots to still place. And we're already at smashing lethal defensive soft cap. So we have some room to play around with putting enhancement sets in. And since we're over in heat loss, we can also check on heat loss and other factors. This has a really high recharge time. So since we're already at defensive soft cap just on powers alone and pool power choices, we can start to work on what powers, what enhancement sets give us recharge. So we can look through here and go, well, Thunderstrike gives us ranged defense. That would be really good for fighting from ranged. We can work on maybe that later. But for now, we're going to look for recharge. And I can see that Entropicaeus gives us recharge, Decimation gives us recharge, Apocalypse gives us recharge. So we're going to, maybe work out from there, do 5 slots on Apocalypse or 5 slots on Decimation for all of the single target damage powers that we have. Pet powers. I already know in advance that, if my mouse will behave, that in both of the recharge intensive pets offer recharge in slot 4. So we could probably go ahead and put 4 slots of each of these into our pet powers. And then you just work backwards from there. Is you find a point where your character meets. Now, if you've gotten all of the power slotted and you're still not a defensive soft cap, and at that point, yes, you are going to have to rely entirely on set bonuses to get your character to a certain point of survivability. Now, just for reference, what exactly would you know, a, what exactly would a decent cold domination look like in terms of if you could transfer the attack powers and everything else across, what would a decent cold domination actually look like? It's a fair question. Well, a little while ago, I did a Dark Blast cold domination. Actually, it was a character that was from the live server. And for. Sorry, something just popped up. She was a character. I saved a Titan Sentinel build for her and her character information. So I made a build for all of my legacy characters. Sorry, I'm. You know how it is. Something pops up and you kind of look away from it and go, I can dismiss that. And you go, did I actually want to dismiss that? And then you go, no, I probably shouldn't have dismissed that so quickly. What was that about? It was not a reminder to get something to drink, but that really does sound like a good idea. Now, what's open here is a Dark Blast Cold Dom. And if we look at our total information, we can see that she's 47, 47, 55, not quite soft cap to range. Now, this is a corruptor. In theory, I could probably take these enhancement slotting sets, these power choices, push them over to the mastermind, and just copy them one by one, and then see if the mastermind fell short on any particular area, or if there was any gaps that need to be closed, and that's called backporting. So let's run through a backporting real quick here, and let's bring up our second NIDS window just hanging around there in the background. We'll bring them all the way up, since this may be easier for the player to, whoever's watching this, to track, since I've got both these windows technically open in front of me. Yeah, OBS is useful in giving the impression of a more adequately aligned stream. Somebody asked me about when I was rolling the dice on a previous stream. I go, "What was number one? What was number one?" Because in order to get into the game window, I couldn't see the notepad that I'd just written a number down on. So yeah, things are you you have no idea how I'm really tempted to take a picture of how complex the screen actually is trying to do all of this. All right. Uh, the crazy OA. Okay, that's actually focused on window I don't want it to focus on. There we go. There's our blank window. And we've got Mastermind, Beast Mastery, Cold Domination. We've got a Corruptor in the background. So we're going to start with our cold powers. Now, obviously I skipped Snowstorm, which I mean, I don't get me wrong on this. My Stormy, I think, still has Snowstorm. But for the most part, it's the until there is a specific toggle slow enhancement set, it's the you might as well just drop it. All right, and we're just gonna go through, and I'm going to try and line up power for power